Hello everyone and welcome to part 18 of my Milwaukee Bucks MyGM on the Xbox One here on Cloud92 TV. We are in Season 3 with the Milwaukee Bucks and I'm showing you guys the All-Star voting for the upcoming All-Star break. We have some players that are going to be voted in. Some of them include Jabari Parker and Jerron Williams, and I think Larry Sanders may be in the voting, but I'm not completely sure. Anyways, in this episode we will be playing up against the Philadelphia 76ers and I will see you guys down at the court. We are in Milwaukee for this game, and I already told you guys at the beginning of this episode that we are playing the 76ers, and the 76ers are not as bad in this game as they are in real life. They have made numerous acquisitions that have benefited the team a lot. Some of their newer players are Jahlil Okafor, Andre Kirilenko, and James Young, and all of those players played pretty well in this game. If you guys remember last episode in this series, I talked about my predictions for the NBA playoffs next year, and I focused on the Eastern Conference, and look at MCW getting that and one layup to go. But as I was saying, I talked about the Eastern Conference last episode. In this episode, I want to talk about my predictions for the Western Conference on who I will think will make the playoffs and where I see them seated. Let's start it off. The number 8 team I have making the playoffs for the Western Conference is actually a pretty big surprise. I have the Houston Rockets at number 8. I feel like they have been killed in this past free agency. They lost Jeremy Lin and Chandler Parsons, so they really have lost a lot of their better scoring threats. Now, obviously, they still have Dwight Howard and James Harden there, but they're seriously not going to be as good as they were last year because they lost those two key players. Their team is centered around offense, and they don't really have that good of a defensive team. So without those two offensive players, they're really going to be struggling. But despite all that, the Rockets are still a pretty good team in the Western Conference, and the Western Conference is so strong. Obviously, if they were in the East, they would be higher up, but they are still good enough to sneak away with the number 8 spot in the West. At the number 7 spot in the West, I have the Memphis Grizzlies, and it kills me to say that because they are such a good defensive team. I really like the way they play. It's just that they're in such a strong conference, and there are definitely 6 teams that are probably better than them. They still have Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph, but they're still looking for that one star player that can really take them to the top, and I think when they had Rudy Gay, they were a better team, but once they get another scoring threat like a Rudy Gay, I think they will benefit, and I think by then I can probably put them in the top 5 in the West. Next off, I have the Dallas Mavericks, and I really like this Dallas lineup. They have Dirk Nowitzki, Chandler Parsons, Tyson Chandler, and they just have so many great players. They don't have a star like on other teams, but they still have a whole bunch of really good guys, and last year they were the 8th seed in the playoffs, and they took the Spurs to 7 games. I feel like if the Mavericks had played any other team in that first round, they probably would have made it to the second round, and I would definitely not be surprised if the Mavericks moved up their ranks in the West from the 8th spot last year to the 6th spot this upcoming year. At the number 5 spot, I have my upset team. They're basically the Hornets I have of the West, and here I have the Phoenix Suns. I like the Suns roster so much. They're definitely one of my favorite teams in basketball, and you can make the argument that the Suns have the best core group of guards in the entire league. They have Goran Dragic, Eric Bledsoe, and Isaiah Thomas. That is just a stellar group of guards. Obviously, they need some work with their big men. I think they still have Emeka Okafor at center. He's a decent player, but they can definitely improve down low, and I think the Suns are going to be extremely motivated to get a high spot in the playoffs this year, especially after last year where they basically got robbed of a good playoff spot. In case you guys didn't know, they did not make the playoffs. They were the 9 seed in the West, but if they were in the Eastern Conference, they would have been like the number 4 seed, and that's just ridiculous. That shows you just how unbalanced the conferences were last year. Going into the second half of this game, we are down by 6 on the 76ers, and our record is still pretty decent at this point. I think we're still around 500, and we're around the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. At the number 4 spot in the West, I have the Portland Trailblazers. A lot of people really like the Trailblazers. They really like Damian Lillard. I'm not the biggest fan of him, to be honest. I think there are definitely better point guards in the league. I would put him in the top 10 for sure by now, but putting Lillard in the top 5 I think would be stretching it a bit. Nevertheless, the Blazers have a pretty balanced roster. Alongside Damian Lillard, they have Wesley Matthews, who can really stretch the floor. They also have LaMarcus Aldridge, who's just a beast inside, and he can also make mid-range jumpers. And they have Nicholas Batum, who is probably a top defender in the league. Now we are down to the top 3 in the West. At the number 3 spot, I have the LA Clippers, and it was pretty tough for me to put them at the number 3 spot, mainly because I debated putting putting them at number 2 and swapping them out with the OKC Thunder. Part of me was saying that the only reason why the Clippers didn't do as good as the Thunder last year was because Kevin Durant had an MVP year, and I don't know if that can really be repeated, but when you look at the roster of both teams, in my mind, the Thunder just have a better roster than the Clippers. Despite that though, it kills me to put the Clippers at the number 3 spot. If they were in the East, they would definitely be in the top 2, and the reason why they are at number 3 is because they are lacking one key position, and that is the small forward position. They do not have that good of a small forward. I think it's like Matt Barnes is the starting small forward because they don't have Danny Granger anymore, and I feel like especially in today's NBA where the small forward is the most key position, you can't be a championship team without a good one. Just look at the Spurs and the Heat. They are some of the newer NBA champions, and they both had great small forwards. The Heat had LeBron James, and the Spurs had Kawhi Leonard. Next up at the number 2 spot, I already told you it's the OKC Thunder, and I feel like the Thunder got robbed out of a good playoff run last year. Last year, Serge Ibaka goes down with an injury, and 2 years ago, they had Russell Westbrook going down with an injury, and I think it's difficult to win an NBA championship when some of your key starters are down with injuries. And I almost put the OKC Thunder at the number 1 spot in the West. I just couldn't do it because there is one team that is better than them. They are the defending NBA champions, and they are the San Antonio Spurs. Every year when the regular season starts, people look at the Spurs and they say they're too old and they're not going to do as well as they did the previous year. And of course, every single year the Spurs play great, and they always seem to get that number 1 spot in the West. They say history repeats itself, and I think that's going to happen again here. And if you guys remember a couple episodes ago, I said the Spurs are one of the biggest winners in the NBA free agency just because they were able to keep around all their stars and give them less money. They were able to keep Tim Duncan and Tony Parker. I'm pretty sure Parker was a free agent. I'm not completely sure. But they were able to keep those key guys that were easily able to say, hey, I won my NBA championship. I just want to go and make as much money as possible now. But they were able to keep those guys around and get them for less money. So you guys can go into the comments below and tell me what your playoff prediction is for the Western Conference. Now let's head into the gameplay of this video. The 76ers have played great thus far. We started off the game with around an 11-point lead. They were able to come back, and at one point they had around a 13-point lead, and then we came back, and now we are up to 9 points with under 3 minutes left. Noel is giving it to James Young in the corner on the inbound pass, and he knocks down that shot. Now Darren Williams is taking up the ball. I try spinning past MCW. They're going to steal it. James Young is on the break. He's going to run, drive in, pass it off to Michael Beasley, who's going to get a layup on the right side of the hoop, and the Sixers are just picking at our lead. It's up to only 5 points, but they can still come back. And look at Jabari Parker posterizing the Sixers defender there. I'm pretty sure that was James Young, and that puts our lead up to 7 points, and Young is going to try to answer back with the floater. Randolph gets the steal, out to Darren Williams, who's going to drive in and slam it at the other end over Nerlens Noel. That was the sequence of events that we needed in order to take a good lead, but now Darren Williams is almost getting a turnover. He's passing it out to Jabari Parker, who's going to drive in and get that contested layup to go. That will clinch us the win, basically. 9-point lead with about 30 seconds left. There's no way the Sixers are going to come back from this, and Williams is embarrassing MCW on that play with that pump fake. MCW went into the air, and Darren Williams was able to knock down that elbow jumper. Anyways, we walk out of Milwaukee with the 116-105 win over the Philadelphia 76ers. Your player of the game was Jabari Parker, and he actually ended this game with a career high in points. He almost hit 40, and he was our leading scorer with 38 points. On the 76ers, James Young led the way with 18 points. Nerlens Noel also had 16. And before ending this video, I'm going to make a trade. I'm sure when you first clicked on this, you were confused on why I had the word Jimmer in the title, and that's because I'm trading for Jimmer Fredette. I will be trading Ben Gordon and a second-round pick for Jimmer Fredette to the Houston Rockets, who actually beat us in the finals last year. So now I'm going to simulate all the way up to January 9th. The next episode in this series will be up against the Boston Celtics, and you know that the Celtics are just a dominant team in my MyGM. They have Kobe and Kevin Love, and Kobe actually announced his retirement if you saw the little news thing on the right side of your screen. Looking at the standings, we are currently the 4th best team in the East. Just in case you guys didn't know, I recently hit 500 subscribers, and I'm going to be making a video for that pretty soon. If you guys have any questions that you want me to answer in that video, it doesn't have to be NBA related or NBA 2k related whatsoever. You can go into the video that I posted, I think a couple days ago. It's basically called my channel update. I think it was the last upload before this one. You can put your questions in the comment section of that video. Anyways, I hope you guys had a fun time watching this video. Be sure to have a great day. God bless you guys. Bye.